Welcome to the Inconceivably Connected Podcast. I'm your host and fellow donor-conceived person, Nick Ludwig. This is episode 2 of the series, and this week we're joined by Kaelin Mae, who, like me, also lives in the state of New York. Her donor-conceived discovery occurred several years ago around Christmas time when she was 22 years old. And like many of us, once she uncovered the truth, her world turned completely upside down. As Kaelin Mae shared with me what her journey has been like so far, one particular comment she made left an impression that's since stuck with me. I won't totally spoil it, but it has to do with the unique positioning some of us in the DCP community are in with respect to social activism and using our voices on behalf of marginalized communities at large. Some of us who are donor-conceived, myself included, have been afforded a clearer and, dare I say, easier path forward, despite also being directly affected by a practice that still carries more than a few severe flaws. What am I to do with that, exactly? My hope is that this podcast might give me a better answer to that question. My conversation with Kaelin Mae was a fascinating and affirming one in so many ways, and I'm really excited for all of you to hear her story. Without further ado, let's dive in.
Hey, so my name's Kaelin Mae. I'm currently in New York, so I am really happy to be here. Thank you, Nick, for having me. I found out that I was donor conceived in 2022. So 3 years later, this is all still, I'm still processing it every day, but I'm definitely in a clearer place than I was a few years ago. So yeah, I'm from Pittsburgh. Happy to be here. So thank you again.
Yeah, so you found out in 2022, and talk me through what that whole experience was like and the kinds of feelings that you had along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually. Growing up, I was told I was conceived via IVF. I always knew that my father had fertility issues. That was something like we openly discussed as a family. We were like miracle babies. So it's funny because I did always have a sense of we were conceived untraditionally. Did you get that message too?
I had some hints along the way that there was a struggle conceiving, but that's about all I got.
So yeah, we always knew that we were conceived untraditionally. So it was unique. So when my parents, on Christmas Day 2022, I actually wasn't going to come home for Christmas because I was really worried about COVID, but I was told I needed to come home. There was something really important we needed to talk about. So that causes like immense anxiety, but eventually my parents sat me and my sibling down at the dining room table. My sibling is about 6 years younger than me, so we've always had a complex relationship due to that age difference. And they essentially sat us down and they told us that your dad is not your biological dad, that you were donor conceived. It was very matter of fact. And what I remember most was my mom pulling out a folder and setting it on the table. I actually, in that moment, was just so angry. Me and my sibling had very opposite reactions. They were ready to sit and listen and really hear my parents. But I ran away, and I really just couldn't even believe what I was hearing, but not because of the content, but just the manner in which I was in my 20s, and I just had no idea. It truly, truly shocked me. So I ran downstairs a little bit later, kind of once the situation had cleared out, and I grabbed the folder and immediately started reading through everything. And it was essentially like the dossier of the donor agency and what they give to the parents who choose to go through with the process, and essentially the information on the donor that they selected. So immediately within an hour of finding this out, I knew that my donor was from a certain part of Pennsylvania, and I knew his height and the color of his eyes and the activities he enjoyed, but nothing else. And it really just from there became a spiral of needing to know more and needing to get a face to the name that I didn't have. And it was excruciating. And my boyfriend at the time came and picked me up, and we ran away and went camping for a few days because I just kind of needed a break from everything. So that was really, I would say, the first stage of the journey.
Okay. And did you have any photos of the donor that you were able to access, or was it all just the information that was in that folder that you had?
It was all just the pretty basic, like, biological information, and then some notes from, I guess, the nurse or whoever was working at the clinic and kind of their judgment of him. So really nothing more.
Was there anything in particular that prompted your parents to have this discussion with you? What sort of triggered that event, if anything?
Yeah, it's interesting because they had mentioned something along the lines of my sibling wanted to do a DNA test. So, I mean, of course that prompted it, but they also explained that there were many different times throughout almost the last decade that they wanted to tell us and just didn't. So I don't know if it was something prompted as much as it was their hand was forced because they knew that time was running out before it was found out one way or the other.
Right. And when you think back in that moment, what do you attribute the differences in response between you and your sibling, right? You said there was kind of an opposite reaction.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with like security and your identity. And I can't speak for my sibling, but I feel like they maybe had this feeling that there was something like that like they weren't really part of the ecosystem that like our family had like nurtured and created. They were kind of like the younger one and maybe like felt like the odd one out sometimes, even though I wouldn't consider that. But I felt so secure in like my like family identity in really every way, like culturally, and just like my name is my parents' maiden name. So just those kind of things that were intertwined, it truly like shook me to my core. So yeah. I think kind of like security and identity, and I wasn't really that secure with mine.
Right. And what was your perception of your parents in that moment? Like, what thoughts were coming up as they divulged this information that they clearly were aware of for, your entire life, but only chose to share it at this particular moment? What kind of feelings arose there?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of go through the stages of grief, and I've heard this been described a few times by people who have had this experience, because you don't really believe it. And then I just felt rage, like unadulterated, just like rage at the situation. But then it turned into almost sympathy, because at least with my family, and I don't know, you read horror stories about how people find out, and there was so much shame and guilt when they presented this because they knew the detrimental effects it would have. Just not really like on our relationship, but just, I don't know, it's shattering to have who you think you are be destroyed when you're really just starting to like get to know yourself. So they definitely expressed like a sadness. And I mean, harboring a lie, you can harbor a lie for a week and you feel guilty and awful. I can't imagine harboring one for decades when it relates to someone you love. So I did feel remorse that probably really defined like the past like decades of their life. And that is like hard to hear, that your parents were suffering like that, because we truly do love each other. So really like flows of rage and sadness and empathy. So it's really hard. It's definitely, yeah, it still goes like that sometimes.
Yeah, it's a whole cocktail of emotions that come up that sometimes don't really mesh well with each other, but they're all there.
Yeah.
So all of this information is out in the open, and what, in your case, did the path forward look like after this big reveal had shown itself to you?
Oh my gosh. Well, for about 1.5 years, I would say I spent an hour online every day Googling things like UCLA communications major. Then I would take the age that he was, the year that he donated, and like subtract it by 18 to try to figure out when he would have graduated high school. I was looking up every single yearbook from around the area where he was, using that year, trying to find someone who looked like me. It was obsessive. It was awful. I was Googling just every single day, and I probably thought 200 plus people were my donor at one point. But then I took an ancestry DNA test, and from there I was refreshing my email every single day for weeks until my test was processed. And then I would refresh my email every single day for months to see if I had any matches. And it was really like a miss. I did not get the answers I wanted immediately. I did not have like the instant gratification there. So it really became a search I was constantly embarking on. I was doing it at work. I was doing it in my off time. I was pulling all-nighters to do it. It really just became something I had to do and had to find. And I finally did find him in a few years ago now, 2 years ago now at this point. And it was crazy how it wasn't really rewarding at all. And I saw him and I realized that in my crazy research, I never would have picked him out of a crowd. So it really was a catalyst at one point, and it became pretty crazy, pretty obsessive. So it kind of was freeing to finally like end that cycle.
Sure. And now when you found him, did you put any effort towards connecting with him either through email, through a phone call, in real life, or has there not been any contact?
Yeah, let me blow his spot up. I tried it. So first you try through the agency. You have to get I had to sign a consent form that also had to be signed by my mother. She was the one who, I guess, filled out the original paperwork, which first off is abysmal because so many people don't have relationships with the person who went through with this process. So the fact that to even start it, you need their consent is just so crazy to me. But I had her help. We signed all the forms. We made the formal request to get his information. And because he's anonymous and because it happened in a state where those kind of laws weren't enacted in the 90s, essentially she told us that this request goes to him to get permission to give you his contact information. He never responded to it. I kind of threw a fit to the agency, and then they told me that they've tried numerous times with other donor-conceived children of his, and he's never given them an answer. They have no up-to-date contact information. They said case closed, don't try to contact him. I found him on LinkedIn. I found his personal website. I've sent many emails, many nice messages I never have gotten a response. And I've talked to some of my newly found half-siblings, and it's the same for them. So there is no desire on his end to connect, and that is totally fine. But yeah, the effort has been made, even just simply to get that acknowledgement, but we've never established contact.
Sure. And then how many half-siblings are in your group that you know of?
Currently there are 6 that I found. We're all about 1 year apart. I would say we all look alike. A few of us have texted, just to kind of talk about this journey. A lot of us have the same health issues, so there's not anything like we're gonna fly out and have a reunion. We're not in a group chat. I'm very jealous of those types of relationships people have, but it's really me and my sibling, and we haven't extended like that sibling circle anymore.
Got it. And you said that your half siblings that come from the donor have also made efforts to connect and have not heard anything back, correct?
Yep.
Got it. In the folder of information that you did have access to, did you feel like there was sufficient information to kind of put you at least a little bit at ease, or were there notable things missing that you feel the right to have?
Yeah, it's funny because there wasn't really anything missing, and it's crazy. You can actually access the donor via the clinic's website still. Like I don't know if he's active, but the profile is still there. And I paid to get his handwriting samples and his voice. So it's just crazy because I did have access to those things, but you get his parents' medical records and all that kind of information, but there's really nothing there. One of them had like high blood pressure and they put an X there, but that's really the extent of information you get. So there's no follow-up. That information was given in 1993 and it's 2025 now. So how much changes in a person's life between that time, and how much of that could be genetic?
Sure. And now your younger sibling, do they also come from the same donor, or are they in a separate group?
Yeah, so I think that was probably the most painful part of the discovery, was we found out we are half siblings. And that, of course, doesn't mean the relationship is anything less. This journey has only made us closer and more connected, but it was shocking. And then it really shocked me because they had no desire to do the things that I was doing. So when I say processing on like opposite spectrums, but at the same time, I felt crazy. And I honestly, if you're listening, Maggie, hi. I honestly was so jealous that they could just accept it with such ease and the strength that they showed. And I just such opposite approaches. But yeah, they also took a DNA test and almost immediately found their donor, while I spent a year and a half waiting for those results every day. So it's kind of like they didn't really care about finding it, and of course it was presented to them in their lap, and it really just, I don't know, there's something about manifesting like what you want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm always perplexed by donor-conceived people who don't express a deep curiosity around it all. Because I feel the need to uncover it all, and some people are able to kind of put it on the back burner. Some days I envy that, and other days I find it to be a blessing that I have this seeker mentality. But you find people all over the spectrum in our little group here that we have. So with all of this out in the open now, how have you seen your relationships with your family affected? What has changed? What has maybe stayed the same? The truth is out now. So how has that resonated since, learning all of this?
Yeah, it's definitely complicated the relationship more just because it's hard to trust people after that fact. But I also I hold this love and I hold this grace to the situation, because really, from a restorative justice practice, it's not good for me to harbor these resentments. and it's not going to be productive for me. And really accepting that they clearly struggled with this, and I'm sure it affected what I told them is, I'm a product of this, but you were the witness and executor of this. And we told them that they need to heal from this wound as well, because this isn't just our wound. So we challenged them to tell the rest of our family. They put it on the table. They said, do you guys want to go and like share this? Or you don't have to share it, but we'll respect and honor what you choose. And we told them, like, this is your truth. This isn't our lie. We didn't know. So we want you to heal too from this. So you need to tell the brothers and the sisters that you lied to if you really want to move forward with this. And they made those calls, and some reactions were more positive than others, but most everyone accepted it with love and like, I'm sorry that you had to endure that alone, because at the end of the day, it really wasn't that big of a deal, and you could have just been honest about it from the get-go. So I definitely ask a lot more of them now. I feel like they have to prove themselves to me more, because you just can't trust everything.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. I think it's like you're initiating a challenge to them. Like, mm-hmm. Hey, it's put up or shut up time, right? Like, yeah. It's time for us to see what kind of courage you carry within yourself now that this is out there. Because if we choose to suppress this and continue hiding from it, that, to me, that never turns out into something healthy. So I applaud your parents for taking those steps and realizing that it was their truth to share. And I hope that has brought some relief as well. I know that, we all go through, like I said before, a number of roller coaster type emotions, but that does sound like they took some accountability for their decisions and tried to correct it, at least. That's not to say that the consequences don't still persist, but there's something to be said for owning it in some way.
Yeah.
Or at least that's my view.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So your parents then share this with extended family. Have you chosen to be open about this with your friends or your acquaintances, whoever else is in your life? Or is it something that you just you keep to the family?
Oh, no, I started yapping about it the minute it happened, because it is really shocking. Now it's like a fun story I can tell at parties, like, I went home for Christmas and I found out this life-changing news. But in the beginning, I definitely reached out to some friends who were conceived, but they knew they were donor conceived, but they knew from the get-go. So we kind of talked about that and like what that culture is like. But really, I didn't reach out to my family immediately. I like canceled a family gathering pretty much like immediately afterwards, because I just couldn't really handle facing it, and I just needed some distance from it. Luckily, I live far away from my family, which, again, a blessing and a curse, but I could kind of avoid it in a way that not everyone can, like if you're living under the same roof. But really, when I wrote the essay that I wrote just about my experience and the rights of the donor conceived, that was kind of me going public with it to my large extended family and my family friends. So I kind of like took ownership of it, and I decided, like, why not be loud about this? This is a very crazy industry, and there's no other community like it, because it is growing so rapidly every day as DNA testing like just becomes more and more of a norm. So when I did go public, like the amount of people who messaged me on Instagram, like just friends and like mutual acquaintances who were like, I actually found this out this year too. It was remarkable. The reaction to it was so much more common than I had ever thought.
Yeah, and I can relate to that as well. When I publicly shared my information for the first time, I got a message from somebody who is just an acquaintance from a long time ago, really, but reached out to me and said, my jaw dropped when I saw that you are in this community as well. I thought I didn't know anybody else that this affected, but now we have that bond. So it's nice to lean into that community and know that we're not alone, right? There's a lot of us out there, and the number just continues to climb up and up. So once you put this out publicly, how did you notice your feelings around the whole situation change? Did you find it to be something that was very helpful? Was it a struggle? Was it a combination of those kinds of feelings? How did it all feel?
Yeah, I think it really only affirmed my desire to address an industry that really has no interest in us. And I don't know, I'm really about the call to action and the call to awareness. So I wanted to really put this in front of people. And the reactions I got really only affirmed everything. And I wanted to also challenge like these family values, because I feel like so many people don't talk about donor conception because they are ashamed, especially when like males like can't produce. It becomes like such a stigmatizing like demasculating thing, and it's really just it's such a normal action, and there's nothing wrong with donor conception, in my opinion. It is the secrecy and how the industry is based on protecting the donors and not giving back to the products that they essentially are making and helping to make. So it really only affirmed like that call to action that we have to rethink and like reprioritize us in the conversation. So it definitely affirmed. It did not make me doubt my beliefs about the industry in any way.
Totally. When you chose to be vulnerable in this way and put your truest of truths out there openly, what kind of effects did you see on those closest to you as they witnessed you take steps to sort of reintroduce yourself to the world?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think sometimes the conversation makes people uncomfortable, and you kind of have to affirm them that it's okay to talk about. I think people are kind of hesitant to bring it up, but I have some really, really wonderful friends who did like have these follow-up conversations. Are there any developments? And again, this was over a years-long journey. And it was a really gratifying announcement when I could tell my friends, like, oh my God, I finally found him. And they'd be like, show me a photo. And I would. And like, no one had a reaction. We were all like, that's just a guy. Like, there's nothing. I look just like my mom, so it's fine. But it really, I did feel like I had people along on the journey with me. And I'm pretty public. I think we believe a lot of things are vulnerable, like we're being vulnerable when we're really just like being ourselves. So I'm really trying to challenge that and try to normalize these kind of conversations, because this is an identity, and we really have a privilege where this isn't an identity that's like discriminated against in any way. So we can really we can be loud and be proud and really like bring attention to this without a lot of repercussions, which is really a rare position for a community to be in.
That's a great point. And I haven't really thought much about that, where there's so many other marginalized groups that have to deal with, hateful speech, hateful action towards them. The donor conceived group has its own set of issues to deal with, but we don't have targets on our backs from other than from the people who who run the industry of sperm donation and all that. So that's a good call out there. I really like that. When you think about the whole nature versus nurture debate, and you have a little bit of information on your donor, you've seen a photo, or at least a photo of him, you've had some connection, or at least text communication with your half siblings. Are there things that you're able to draw from all of that, where you're able to say, oh, okay, this aspect of me might actually come from this unknown biological side?
Ooh, yeah. It's hard because I'm constantly fighting the battle of like, is this a genetic predisposition, or like, am I just an asshole? Like, I really it's really hard because my family is all like very empathetic and like very kind and sweet. And I'm kind of like, I'm the rough one. I am kind of mean sometimes, and there's just an edge that I feel like my family like doesn't have, and it feels like there's something there. And it's really cringy, but my donor is a screenwriter, has written for some like truly awful like D-list movies, and he has a blog where he publishes all his writing, and it is like god awful. It is like god awful screenplays. He's in LA, hire him, whatever. But I am like, wow, I really got my talent from my family, like my real family. So it's really interesting. My half siblings and I have like actually talked about this, and we've never like found common ground in that. So I really can't answer that question because I'm still figuring it out. But I think it really speaks to, if you feel out of place in your family, maybe there's more to it.
Totally. So it sounds like nurture is what won the battle in your case.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Yet speaking on that thought of like, if you feel something, maybe there's something more going on. Did you ever have moments before you knew all of this where you questioned with, let's say, just a level of genuinely believing like something was off, or something was not as it seemed? Or was this as big of a shock as it was for you because you didn't have any of those feelings?
Yeah, I really struggled as a teenager. I had like a really hard time, and my parents really like held my hand throughout that. But they also sat with me in like multiple medical appointments, and when they asked for the family history, they gave my dad's, which in retrospect just wasn't true. And it really like did a lot of harm to me. But I think in a desire to feel like I was part of the family, I really convinced myself that there was something wrong with me, because I really like was a black sheep like at the time, especially as a teenager. And our family has like a lot of family pride. We like really care about like our ancestry and like where we come from, and really that was like such a core part of my identity, and really one of the only tangible things I had attached to, especially as a teenager when everything was so hard for me. And that is, I think, why it really just like shocked me so much. And in retrospect, I don't even think my attachment to like my family history in that way was that strong, but I think I convinced myself because I didn't really have much else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another area that I sometimes forget is a big part of the equation. Is we grow up believing that, we're 25% this, 25% that, and believing that our ancestry is tied to certain countries or, places around the world. What was that like for you? Was there a big shock as it relates to seeing where your ancestry came from?
Yeah, I think Not really for me in that way, because I went from like finding out I was like a white German person to a white Polish person. So like the type of food just like really changed, but nothing more like substantial, I would say, like culturally. So there wasn't, it's really crazy. They picked a donor who like looked just like my dad. So from like, I don't know if we want to say like from an ethnic cultural point of view, there like really wasn't a lot of shock there, but I have heard from other donors sometimes like you find out you're actually like mixed, and like that's a whole like that is a whole like shift in your perception and like how you are treated like in the world. So I didn't have anything like that in my experience, but I know that a lot of people do. So that was something that like really didn't throw a curveball or anything.
Got it. Are there any practices or things that you do like in your day-to-day life that have helped you, you know, in a notable way, sit with this new identity that you now carry? Anything that stands out in terms of just like what you've done to help deal with the new you?
Yeah, some days I like just, it could be the furthest thing from my mind, but other days I wake up and I'm just like, I wonder what my grandma looked like. But it's really, really hard. I think one of the things that has like helped ground me the most is going to like the community forums, like on Reddit and on like the We Are Donor Conceived Facebook groups, and reading both like what the elders in the community have to say about their experience, but also trying to offer some advice about like the DNA testing process to people who are only just finding out today. So it's really, I revisit what that process was from the very beginning a lot to feel secure about where I am now, and really try to affirm people that you will be able to process it. It will get better, even if it does like just pop up in your dreams sometime.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if not for some of those support groups that you just mentioned, I feel like especially in the early days of my discovering everything, I would have felt even more lost. So I'm very thankful that those online groups exist. So yeah, that's another good call out. Is there anything that you feel you'd like to share sort of as a message to people outside of the donor conceived community to give them, you know, an idea of what it is we experience and what you think is, you know, perhaps most relevant for them to know about the journey that we all take?
Yeah, I think there needs to be a public understanding that this is really like an emerging, I don't want to use the word crisis, it's an emerging like phenomena within like our current world. Like this is happening across the world. We are not a monolith, but also I want to see real advocacy around this work. It's only now like really starting to be studied in a true way at universities and by like private think tanks. I really want there to be just more of a grasp and like need to understand what the industry is like, why it is so unregulated, and why people are, if this many people within a community are having difficulty processing this type of like situation, then that is like a public health crisis. There is clearly a bigger issue here, and it's only being called out because of DNA testing. And I just really want more eyes on the situation. I think it's only going to grow and grow and grow. And I think we're going to see in our lifetime really a complete overhaul of the entire donor conception industry. Whether that means like more regulations, more government oversight, I can't say. But we need more transparency, and the rights of like donor conceived people matter as much as like the like anonymity of sperm donors.
Yeah, I really appreciate all of that, because the only way that it gets people's attention is by speaking about it and sharing what we go through. And being vulnerable, not just with the people in our inner circle, but the people that are scattered throughout the entire world. So I really like that take. Any final thoughts that you think are worth sharing, that you think is relevant to your story that maybe hasn't come up yet?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that if you are someone who donated your sperm at some point and you never wanted to be found, I think if like a nice person contacts you and isn't crazy and is like, hey, just wanted to let you know I exist, don't pretend they don't exist. Just acknowledge them. No one's mad at you for donating. We get it. You were in your 20s and needed to make some money. Like, it happens. But you can't just pretend this human being, this life that you consensually created doesn't exist. I'm pretty tired of it. If we need to face it, so do you. And I'm sorry that it isn't anonymous, and I'm sorry that it's no longer confidential because of this third party, but you are part of this community too, whether you like it or not. So this is my call. I don't think any donors are going to be listening, but I hope they do.
Well, maybe donors might not be listening, but ones who are considering using a donor, I would suspect, may be interested in listening to a conversation like this. So if you're not affecting people who've already done the deed, maybe you'll change somebody's decision making for, you know, those who are considering doing the deed at some point in the future. So I appreciate that as well.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could meet your donor, what would you do? Where would you go?
Where would I go? I think I have an idea. Well, first, I would say, yes, I would definitely sign up for meeting the donor.
Okay.
And I clarify that because I know some people are not interested. I don't know how that could be, but I would definitely want to meet him. Not because I feel like anything has been lacking, but especially through the relationships I've made with some of the half siblings and being able to see that the nature side of the nature versus nurture equation does carry meaningful weight. Mm-hmm. Like, I would want to see what that looked like from the donor himself. I've seen a lot of photos of him, so I have a sense of what his personality is like, and I can actually make some pretty clear connections of who I am versus who I perceive him to be.
I feel like I would want to compete with my donor at like some kind of weird sport, because I just feel like I would win. Like, I feel like I have this, like, I don't know, I want to like destroy him in some diplomatic way, but that's probably not healthy. But maybe we could just drink a beer together. I don't know, he might be like a millionaire, we can't be sure.
Yeah, so do you know much? I mean, I know you have limited information, but are there is there any speculative kind of things that you can draw from the limited information that you have about the donor that resonates with you and seems to fit, or is there just not enough?
It's pretty funny because he could be from anywhere, like in the country, from this the clinic my family used. Like, my sibling's donor is like an ex-Mormon military guy in Utah. Like, that's pretty crazy. Mine is like also like in the same state as where I grew up. Like, I know his type. I know them. Roman Catholic Polish boy from the mountains in Pennsylvania. So there's not much mysticism to me and like what his personality is like. But I mean, he's a screenwriter in LA, as far as I can tell, super bachelor life. Again, his screenplays about like gangsters in Philadelphia leave much to be desired. So he's really like an enigma to me, and like I find that pretty fascinating. Like, he isn't boring. He might be crazy. Like, we just can't know. But that's all I have on him. Yeah. He probably sees me like go on his LinkedIn like once a month, see if there's any like major updates, but
Yeah.
nothing more substantial.
Well, I think there's something to be said for an element of the unknown existing in our lives, right? And there's always something that feels like it needs to be uncovered. And, sometimes that can cause anxiety, but I think it could also be a positive thing too, where it sort of forces you to question things more deeply. Or at least that's how I try to view it. Oh, last question for you. So with your half sibling group, I know you said there's kind of limited interacting there. Do you see that changing in the future? Have you sensed any deeper desire from any of them to form more meaningful relationships, or is it something that they seem to just be content with leaving kind of off to the side?
Yeah, a few of them. Actually, it's funny. A few of them who I contacted like through Ancestry, it was actually their parents who replied, like the mom, to give me more information. But I know of their existence, but I haven't spoken with them. But the one, we're very close in age. I think we probably have very similar, I don't know. I think we'd be friends if we hung out. But we text each other. We keep up with each other's lives from a distance. And I think that's the most I'll ever get. And I'm comfortable with that. I think at this point, again, I think like what you said before, like I have a very loving family that I was raised by. I do have a sibling I'm very close with. So there's not something that I was longing for that maybe this experience opened the doors up to. But I do hear all the time, like some people will just find a new family and be fully integrated into it and like have new aunts and brothers and cousins. And like, that's beautiful. But I luckily grew up in an environment where I had all those things already. So it's not something I need to seek out, but I am always open for a deeper connection with them. But I don't think anything needs to be forced at the moment.
Thank you so much, Kaelin Mae, for sharing your story. I personally found so many helpful insights in this one, and I think a really important distinction was made as it relates to how families move forward with the truth coming out. This isn't an I need to heal from this situation or a you need to heal from this situation. It's a we need to heal from this situation. And I think if we can frame it that way, there's real opportunity for growth and evolution. Just something to think about. If you're enjoying these episodes and would like to know more of my own personal story, you can read my book titled Inconceivably Connected, A True Story of Shocking DNA Results and Chasing the Unknown. It's available online on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and pretty much everywhere. The production, music, and editing for the Inconceivably Connected podcast were done by me, your host, Nick Ludwig. And if you are donor conceived and would like to tell your story on the show, please email inconceivablyconnected@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back again for another episode next week with a new guest. See you next time.